No intro today, I've got information to give you. The Battlefield 1 beta files have been mined, combed through and picked away at, and we have some solid information as to what weapons are coming in the final game. And that's due out in about a month or so now. There's some really interesting inclusions in here, plenty of weapons we haven't seen yet. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, I want to start with the pistols. We all know about the M1911 and the P08 already, and we've seen some sightings of others during DICE videos and trailers that they've released as well, but for the sake of clarity, I'm going to go through all of them that are mentioned in the game files. I have no information if these are all to be included in the final game, but we may as well tick them off anyway. So first of all, the 1911 and the P08, both of those were in the alpha and the beta. And then we'll move on to the Bulldog revolver. This is a British pocket revolver designed in 1892 by Philip Webley & Son, whose design was actually copied many times by other manufacturers in Europe shortly after. The Borchardt C93 is making an appearance as well. We saw this in the Gamescom trailer. The weapon was the forerunner to the Luger pistol, and you will see many similarities in their design. Next is the Gasser M1870. It's an Austro-Hungarian revolver produced in the 1870s and adopted by their cavalry regiment. The weapon was officially taken out of service in 1898, but many Austrian stormtroopers carried this weapon during battles in World War I due to its heavy stopping power. Next, we have the Mauser 1914. This is a German-produced cartridge pistol chambered for the 32 ACP round. Certainly got some stopping power there. And after that, we have the Colibri. Now, this is rather an interesting one. I'm sure you can tell from the picture. The Colibri pistol chambers a 2.7 by 9mm round, and it's said to be one of the smallest pistols ever produced. And it was invented by an Austrian watchman in the 1860s and was produced, it said, for self-defense and concealment. Now, I can't wait to see what this looks like in Battlefield 1, because in real life, this thing is absolutely tiny. Imagine seeing that in your player's hands in Battlefield 1. After that, we have the Beretta M15. It's an Italian cartridge-fed pistol built to supersede various other sidearms the Italian Empire were using at the time. And then the Roth Steyr M1907. This semi-automatic pistol was one of the first ever produced to be adopted by the land army of a major power. The Austro-Hungarian cavalry units were issued these weapons during the war, and it stayed in service all the way through to 1945. The Colt Model 1903 Hammerless is next. This semi-automatic pistol, designed by John Browning in the early 1900s, despite its name, does actually have a hammer on the weapon. It's just concealed under the rear of the slide. This allows the pistol to be carried in pockets and removed easily without the hammer getting caught on anything. Another revolver now, the Smith & Wesson Model 3. This revolver was produced in the 1860s and was modified by two major powers at the time. The US Schofield model, who modified it to suit his cavalry needs, and the Imperial Russian Army, who ordered 41,000 of these weapons with the Russian .44 caliber round chambered instead. After that, we have the Mars Auto pistol. This British design was developed in the 1900s by Hugh Fairfax and was manufactured by Webley and Scott. And it was rejected as a replacement to the Webley and Scott revolver by the British War Office due to significant recoil, muzzle flash, and mechanical complexity. Now, I'm sure that won't be represented in Battlefield 1, it's just to give variety. And then, of course, we do have the Webley revolver. This was the standard issue British Empire sidearm at the start of the war. The Mark V variant was the standard issue, but more of the Mark IVs were actually in service at the time. In May 1915, the Mark VI became the flagship and stayed in its place for the rest of the war. Two more pistols now. First of all, we have the Howder pistol, and this is a generic name for large caliber handguns used in the Far East and Africa during the 19th century. The name Howder comes from the large platform mounted on the back of an elephant. Battlefield 1's very own elephant gun. And lastly, we have the Bodeo 1889, an Italian-produced revolver issued to Italian soldiers during the First World War. This was one of the weapons superseded by the Beretta M15 that I mentioned earlier. Now, that's a lot of pistols. 13, in fact. Are all of them going to be included in the base game for Battlefield 1? I'd find it strange if they were, but then again, I'm not going to complain about having more weird and wonderful weapons from the era to play around with. Next, we're moving on to the primary weapons. Again, I'll mention the ones we already know about from the alpha and the beta, and then we'll move on to the newer stuff. And first up, we have the assault class. We have the Beretta M1918, the Automatico, coming in factory, light infantry, and trench variants. And then we also have the MP18 coming in artillery, experimental, and trench variants. These two were available in the beta that you've just played, along with the Remington Model 10 shotgun, and that comes in factory, hunter, and heavy variants. New weapons coming to the assault class. First up, we have the Hellriegel 1915. This Austro-Hungarian weapon was considered one of the heavy machine guns during the war, and it chambered the 9mm stay around fed via a belt, which was water-cooled. In Battlefield 1, we'll see it in the factory and artillery variants, and interestingly, we saw this in the Gamescom trailer. The player holding it got flattened by the train. Next, we have the Winchester Model 1897 shotgun, coming in hunter, light infantry, and assault variants. This is known more commonly as the trench gun, and one of the weapons the Harlem Hellfighter soldier uses in some of the Battlefield 1 Kia. There will be a specific Harlem Hellfighter skin for the 1897 as well. And lastly, the Browning Auto 5. We saw this in one of the weapons trailers that went out on the Battlefield YouTube channel, and it comes in the Hunter, Special, and Light Infantry variants. It was the first successful semi-automatic shotgun ever produced, and remained in production until 1998. Next up, we're moving on to the medic class, quickly to cover off some of the weapons that we know about. The Selbstlader M1916 rifle, coming in factory, artillery, and sharpshooter variants. The Mondragon rifle, coming in marksman, artillery, and light infantry variants. The Che Rigotti, coming in factory, artillery, and trench variants. And the Winchester 1907, coming in factory, auto, and trench variants. It seems there's only one mention of another rifle coming to the medic class in the files at the moment, and that is the Remington Model 8 rifle, coming in factory, special, and sharpshooter variants. Another weapon designed by John Browning. It was originally named the Remington Auto Loading Rifle, but was changed to the Model 8 in 1911. Moving on again now to the support class, and we have a couple of new weapons here, both of which I think you'll be very happy to see. Let's just check off the other weapons first of all though. The Benny Mercier coming in gunner, artillery, and light infantry variants. Then you've got the heavy MG, the Bergmann MG15NA, coming in low weight, light infantry, and suppressor variants. The Madsen MG, coming in low weight, light infantry, and trench variants. And the Lewis gun, coming in low weight, artillery, and suppressor variants. The two new guns kind of sit in the middle, nowhere near being the heaviest and nowhere being the lightest that are on offer, and first of which is the Hort automatic rifle. Now I'm sure I've butchered the pronunciation of the name, but this is a Canadian weapon produced in 1916 and was built to meet the shortfall of light machine guns that the Canadian Expeditionary Force had at the time. It comes in low weight and artillery variants, and I'm sure plenty of Canadians out there who said they weren't being represented in Battlefield 1, well, now you have a weapon that you can use. And secondly, and this is the one that I think you'll really, really like, the BAR, the Browning Automatic Rifle. This was produced by John Browning as a direct replacement to the Sholshat and the Benny Mercier, which were issued to US soldiers in Europe in favour of an all-American weapon. The BAR comes in gunner, light infantry and trench variants, and this weapon, along with one of the scout rifles, are probably the ones I'm looking forward to using most of all. Onto the scout class now. I do have a few miscellaneous weapons to touch on at the end, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Again, I'll run through these scout rifles that we already know about and then move on to the new stuff. First up, the Winchester 1895 coming in rifleman, marksman and trench variants. Then the Lee Enfield Mark III, the SMLE, coming in rifleman, carbine and sharpshooter variants. Then the Gewehr 98 coming in factory, marksman and sharpshooter variants. And finally, the Gewehr M95 in rifleman, carbine and sharpshooter variants. This new weapon we got a tiny glimpse of during the weapons trailer that was put up on the Battlefield YouTube channel, and I'm sure you've all guessed it anyway. It's the M1903 Springfield rifle. American made, produced in numbers north of 1 million, and truly one of the most iconic rifles in existence. This is the scout rifle that I want to use. It comes in experimental, sharpshooter and marksman variants. And finally, some miscellaneous weapons. We know about the C96 carbine being in the tanker and pilot classes, but that's joined by the From a Stop pistol and the Piper revolving carbine. Both of these will be available to the tanker or pilot classes in the game, and at the moment, seemingly nowhere else. And finally, we have the Martini Henry, a lever-actuated rifle that will be one of your choices in the cavalry class. And like the From a Stop and the Piper, this weapon does not appear to be available to any other class in the game at the moment. That is one long list of weapons, and don't forget, this may still not be the final list that we get for the game. This was only taken from the beta files and therefore may not include all of the information coming in the final game. There's plenty more information in the data dump about vehicles, weapon skins, gadgets, dog tags, assignments, so be sure to stick around this week as I try and bring you as much of that information as I can. It just didn't really make sense to put it all in this video. This one is already 13 minutes long. But thank you very much for watching. Leave me your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think of some of these new weapons. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.